Hello, I'm Ashley Thomas and welcome to my channel, and here is my very late review of Underwater, directed by a William Eubank. So the film is based aboard a research drilling station 7 miles below the surface of the ocean, and something happens and you get these creatures that just sort of appear out of nowhere and are stalking the crew, and it's up to the crew to try and get back to the surface. I really dug the trailers to this film. I really liked the look of the movie from the trailers. To me, it reminded me a lot of Alien. So I was really looking forward to checking this film out. And it's been, I don't know why it's taking me so long to check it out, but we finally rented it last night. And what I really liked about this movie is one of the very first shots, in fact, which you're on the station and you've got the camera and it's just there still looking down a corridor, and you've got the lights flickering, very atmospheric. It's a real set, which I really dug. There's a lot of real sets in this movie, real practical effects as well, and you've got the camera and it just slowly pans around, and it was so much like Alien. Like, this film, you could just tell that the director, William Eubank, was very inspired by movies like Alien, and I just loved that. I just loved how he captured that same sort of atmosphere and vibe, and when it came to the set design and the actual aesthetic of the movie was very, very Alien. And I really dug that, from the suits to the actual sets. And I mean, just the way things were put together, like there was a lot of, like, they would get on something that would actually move. It was something that was built and they were moving on it. It was just little things like that. From the suits that they wear when they go to walk on the ocean bed, the actual set design. I just really dug the look, and it just reminded me a lot of Alien. I keep saying Alien, but there was just so many nods to that movie within this. But there's a big difference between this movie and Alien is obviously in space. This one is underwater. You're 7 miles below the surface of the ocean. And William Eubank does a really good job at sort of creating that feeling that you're submerged. These characters are submerged under all of this water, 7 miles under the ocean. He really does a good job at creating that very sort of claustrophobic feeling and that sort of really close atmosphere, and I really dug it. And there is, in a way, this film could have easily have just been a rip-off of films like Alien, but I felt like there was enough. I felt like this film felt original enough. Like, the main key difference is this is not in space, it's under the ocean. And even though it's very, very similar to movies like Alien, we have seen it before, there was just something about sort of just seeing all of these sets. There are so many movies that have tried to replicate Alien since Alien was released, and they've not quite managed to capture that same feeling when it comes to the atmosphere and the vibe and the look of basically something that looks real in a science fiction setting. So, Alien, for example, was based in the future. It's in a science fiction setting on a mining ship, but it felt real. It felt dirty. You could smell the oil, and I love that about Alien. And I think William Eubank does a great job of doing the same thing. Like, it feels real. It feels like you're on this station with this crew of people 7 miles below the surface of the ocean, and you can, you could feel dirty by just looking at the visuals. It feels real. You could almost like you smell and taste the seawater. And yeah, I really liked that. I also really dug the lighting in this movie and some really nice camera shots and angles. There's some particular moments, there's certain particular moments which, again, I don't know if it's because, it was intentional or just because from one of the first scenes it's like, yeah, this is like Alien. But there are a couple of moments in terms of lighting, reminded me of David Fincher's Alien 3. And I adore Alien 3, but there was just certain things they did with the lighting and certain scenes and moments that reminded me of that movie, as well as the fact you've got Kristen Stewart almost bald like Ripley from Alien 3 as well. I don't know if that was a nod towards the character of Ellen Ripley or not. Perhaps it was. I do not know. So I wouldn't really say that this was a scary movie. Like, I think if you got kids, I think if I was the same age when I first watched Alien, I probably would have been scared of this movie. I think what they really did a good job of creating was atmosphere and suspense and tension. Like, there's a lot of tension in this movie, and as a result you get that it sort of adds to the creepiness and eeriness of certain scenes. Like when they're on the the seabed and they go in, they sort of walking on the seabed through this darkness. It feels claustrophobic, it feels creepy, and just from the lighting and the way it's shot, even though at times it does become a little bit disorientating when the creatures show up and all of that, just the way it was done, I really liked. They really managed to achieve this really eerie, suspenseful atmosphere full of tension. Like, it does have you thinking, right, what's going to happen next? And a lot of it because they linger on the characters and the characters within these moments. And this build-up of tension is often created by simple things like noises, for example. So these characters will be contained somewhere and they'll hear these noises, and you're just focusing on these characters, trying to work out what's going on. And there's a lot of that throughout the movie, which I really liked. In terms of dialogue, I don't think it's quite ropey in places. It's very tight, and I think it works. I think a tight script works for these type of movies, but there were moments in which I was like, oh, that did not feel quite natural when a certain character said a certain thing. So I don't think the script was its strongest aspect, but it's okay. And I love the fact you don't really see much of the creatures right up until, say, the third act, or coming into the third act. Like, there is this slow build-up. The pace is actually quite pacey. It moves along quite fast, but very similar again to Alien. But I thought the pace was just right, but you don't really see a lot of the creatures for the first hour. It's just a lot of noises and glimpses, and I love that because it adds to the horror, it adds to the creepiness and the mystery. There's nothing much more frightening than your own imagination and what you can cook up in your own imagination, and this is what this film does. Like movies like Alien, where you only saw the alien briefly or the creature briefly, it allows your imagination to fill in the blanks, and that's why I felt like this film, it succeeded on a certain level when it came to the horror. Like, for me, it wasn't really scary, but it was creepy and it was eerie, and I liked it. The only downside is, and this is like a minor gripe for me, I think it's more of a personal gripe, because when it comes to films like this, and when you do such a good job at creating the tension and the atmosphere, I do feel like the overuse of music can destroy that horror element slightly, and I do feel like during certain scenes, perhaps the musical score could have been dialed down. I don't feel like music always helps add to the horror, and I felt like with this film there was a bit too much of a reliance of the musical score during these moments, and this is just my own personal gripe, really. But I just prefer, I think in films like this, especially when you've done such a great job at building that tension and creating the atmosphere, that you need to dial back on the music and just allow the imagination and the visuals to play out, because I think that's more terrifying than adding a scary score on top of it. So from a technical aspect, the way this film was crafted, from the set design, the look, the feel, the camera, the use of camera and the angles, and just the general, so how this film was made from a technical aspect, I really dug. And I think it's why I enjoyed it so much, because I've not seen, it's very rare, I think it's the first time, in fact, that I've actually seen a director I feel almost capture that exact vibe and atmosphere of movies like Alien. But yeah, I really admired the technical aspect of the movie. It looked like they were 7 miles under the surface of the ocean, walking on the seabed. It felt like you were there. And for them to achieve that, I thought, for me, was a great achievement. The biggest issue that I had with the movie, though, was the characters. And everyone is okay. I mean, all the performances are okay. Kristen Stewart, I thought, was okay. I thought she did a good job. Everyone was sort of okay. It was most of the character development. I felt like we needed a little bit more time with these characters and sort of their relationships with each other before the shit hit the fan, basically. And sort of really, in a way, I think the intentions were so for you to get to know the characters as the shit hits the fan. So as everything starts to escalate within the first 5 minutes of the movie, they do attempt to flesh these characters out as the story is progressing. But for me, I just needed a little bit more meat on these characters because I just didn't quite care enough for them. And you've got the main character played by Kristen Stewart, and there's a certain reveal to this character that's later on in the movie, I would say around the second act, going into the third act. And I really think it's a reveal in regards to the sort of the history, the background of her character. And I felt like that reveal needed to be a lot earlier for it to have had the emotional punch that it required later on. I feel like we should have had that reveal, that sort of backstory to Kristen Stewart's character, Nora Price, a lot earlier in the film, because then I felt like we would have had a little bit more of an emotional attachment to the character. And that was what the film was really lacking for me, was they needed a little bit more character development and just had a little bit more of an emotional attachment, because it does kind of, to an extent, pull on the heartstrings slightly towards the end. And I could see what they were trying to do, but overall, it was just left me. It just sort of felt a little bit flat, and I just felt like it needed a little bit more clout. But overall, the experience I quite enjoyed. But yeah, I liked the atmosphere that they create throughout the film, and the mystery behind the creatures and all of that. I really enjoyed it, and I think I admired the film more for its technical aspect. I think what really let the film down for me was its characters. But overall, yeah, I really liked it. It's one of those films that I'm a little bit confused by with the Rotten Tomatoes score, because I believe it's something like 50-odd%. Let's have a look. Like, it's 47% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I don't quite get it. I mean, yeah, okay, we have sort of seen it before, but I feel like there was so much they did do right in the movie that I just appreciated it for, from a technical aspect. I really appreciated the film and what it managed to achieve in terms of tension and suspense and, that creepiness. And that's what a horror film should do. And yeah, it's very clearly inspired by films like Alien. And apparently it's also inspired by H.P. Lovecraft. I've not really dived into the work of H.P. Lovecraft. But apparently the creatures themselves are inspired by H.P. Lovecraft. So there's obviously an inspiration from other materials. But I think I just really appreciated that real feeling of, seeing a film crafted. There was a lot of love. I felt a lot of love while watching this movie. There was a lot of heart in it. This director and the film crew, you could tell he wanted to make a really good film. The year was inspired by other famous, very well made movies, but they wanted to make their own, and I appreciated it for that. It was, yeah, I really liked it. Yeah, it failed on the character front, and I feel like they needed a little bit more focus on the characters and the dialogue. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I do highly recommend Underwater. It didn't let me down. I really liked it. So yeah, I will be giving Underwater a 7.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching. They are my thoughts and opinions on Underwater. A very late review from me. But I really wanted to check it out, and I really wanted to share my thoughts and opinions on it because I actually quite liked it. Like I said, I'm a bit surprised with the 47% on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah, perhaps the film could have tried to have done something different with the material. Like, it is very almost paint by the numbers, sort of how it plays out, but there was just enough in it for me to enjoy and appreciate. So yeah, thanks for watching. I do have an update video coming in regards to gaming and streaming, because gaming is another passion of mine, so I've got that video coming very shortly after this one. So yeah, thanks for watching. I really do appreciate it. And remember, if you want to follow a geek from Wales who just loves to talk about film and TV, then don't forget that. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll be seeing you guys soon.